On the developments in eastern Ukraine. I'm joined now by Security and Defence Fellow Bruno Lete of the German Marshall Fund in Brussels. Thanks for joining us on Good Morning Europe. As Shona was saying there, no one wants an escalation in hostilities in eastern Ukraine. So why are we seeing this increase in hostilities and tension?
Well, it's never a coincidence when Russia rolls its muscles. I think there are reasons both at home in Russia and internationally. At home, we see that things are not going very well for Putin. There's a popular election in September, but the economy is underperforming. The corona pandemic is not under control, and the power of Putin is being challenged by the dissident Alexei Navalny. So there are really reasons for Putin to try to distract the attention of the population inside Russia. That's one. And this move at the Ukrainian border is just doing that. Internationally, it's not going very well for Russia either. We see that the US President Biden has called Putin a murderer, a killer. We see that both the United States and Europe has imposed additional sanctions on Russia after the debacle with Navalny. We also see, for instance, that the peace talks, the Minsk peace accords, are not going very well for Russia. Ukraine has denied some of the conditions that Moscow asked for. And on top of all that, there's a NATO summit in June where NATO and Ukraine may well be reinforcing the relationship. NATO is right now considering to give Ukraine perhaps a membership action plan. So all these things together are really against Russian interests. And I do believe that this buildup that we see right now at the border is really a way for Putin to basically show its muscles and say, I'm still in charge, I'm still in power, and Russia can hurt Western interests right there in Ukraine.
Well, you mentioned NATO. What do you expect to come out of the talks in Brussels today?
Look, first of all, I think really having two senior members of the U.S. cabinet in town is a testimony that the United States is re-engaging with Europe, is re-engaging with allies, a very different story than what we saw under the Trump administration with the America First policy. When it comes to Ukraine, the primary objective will be to avoid escalation, to avoid military incidents. Diplomacy will be the key word. How to basically make sure that Russia understands that the cost of escalating will be too high. So I think there will be two things on the table. First of all is how to revive the Minsk peace talks, which are now in a deadlock. That will be an important aspect. And on the other hand, how the Normandy format, which is a group consisting of Russia, Ukraine, Germany, and France, can basically coordinate on the situation today. So I think diplomacy will be the key. On the other hand, besides diplomacy, not only words, but they also need to be supported by actions. We see the United States is now considering to send 2 warships to the Black Sea, also to make sure that this diplomatic message is well understood by that mean as well.
So a delicate balance of diplomacy backed up by action. Briefly, how dangerous is the current moment, and is there a real risk of escalation here, things going wrong?
Look, we've seen that military incidents can occur in a second. We've seen it happening, for instance, in the past, in 2008, with the war in Georgia. So it's really important that no pretext is being given. Also, we see that the violence is increasing. Over the past weeks, 28 Ukrainian servicemen have been killed in the Donbass region over increased violence. So really, it is definitely a real opportunity there that things inflame in an instant.
Bruno Lete from the German Marshall Fund, thanks very much for joining us there from Brussels.